So, real quick disclaimer before you watch this episode. I am literally in the middle of editing this right now, and Tyler Huntley just got released from the Cleveland Browns. But I still wanted to release this episode for you guys because I think that it has a lot of really cool information and talks about Shedeur and whatnot. So, keep that in mind when I start asking questions about Tyler Huntley and whatnot, is that this was recorded before he had been released. But yeah, that's really all that I got. But enjoy the video, and thanks guys for the support. Welcome back to the Play-by-Play Podcast YouTube channel, where today we will be looking at the Cleveland Browns' final preseason game that happened yesterday against the LA Rams, and more specifically focusing on Shedeur Sanders, his final preseason performance, what his chances are at really making the Browns roster, and through it all, really determining what this preseason has really been for Shedeur Sanders. Are the Cleveland Browns really sabotaging him, or is there a little bit of self-sabotage involved in these very, very poor performances? But before we get into the episode, I want to encourage you guys to go down below, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment on the episode, as well as share with your friends and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those ads are going to be down below, where on all those social medias you will get to see my latest reaction to the breaking news in the NBA, the NFL, and combat sports. And you will never miss for whenever the podcast decides to upload a video. Without further ado, guys, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. So the Cleveland Browns wrapped up their preseason yesterday with a 19-17 win over the Los Angeles Rams. And through this, we got to see a whole bunch of different quarterbacks within that Browns rotation. Still no sign of Kenny Pickett being in the lineup so far, as he is still struggling with a nagging injury. But we got to see Joe Flacco start the game off in the first quarter, and he looked great, to be honest. Only missed one pass on the day, one touchdown for 71 yards. It was a really impressive performance from a veteran, and that's really what the Browns got him for, was to be able to lead what is really a really lackluster offense that did at some points in the season last year was able to show sparks, like in that Monday Night Football game against my Denver Broncos with the course of Jameis Winston. But within that game, obviously Winston making some mistakes. Flacco, much more veteran heavy, a guy who has been in this league for a very, very long time, whose job is really to limit mistakes as much as he can. That's really what they go ahead and brought him in for, and it showed. It was showcased yesterday in his first quarter performance. Then they bring in Dylan Gabriel to finish off the half within that second quarter. And I have to say, Gabriel looked fantastic, and I've actually really enjoyed watching him throughout this preseason, and he's really surprised me. I mean, he hasn't done anything necessarily exceptional, but he's just made the right plays, and he looks like a professional quarterback out there. His pocket presence is very, very strong, which is a negative that we're going to talk about when it comes to Shedeur Sanders in just a couple of moments. But his pocket presence is really, really strong. He does a really solid job and not dropping too deep back, stepping up within the pocket when the pocket begins to collapse. There are moments when he's able to evade pressure and be able to get out into the open field and run for a couple of yards. And, he has had some solid, accurate throws within there. Yes, there has been a little bit of mistakes. There was a pretty bad interception that he threw, I believe, in the third game that they had, the previous game before this, in the game that they played. But outside of that, the man has been able to put together consistent drive after consistent drive after consistent drive. And yesterday, when you look at the quick stat line, 12 for 19, 129 yards, one touchdown, that's more than I ever really thought that he would really amount to within the NFL. And doing that against, consistent starter to backup players, like solid talent within the NFL for sure, that shows that the Cleveland Browns are going in the right direction with him. And in some ways, we're pretty smart in being able to draft him within the fourth round over other quarterback prospects, which we will now get to, because then the Cleveland Browns then shifted to Shedeur Sanders for the third and majority of the fourth quarter, which I was super excited about, seeing as he was going to get a lot of playing time. He was going to pretty much get 2 full quarters of playing time out there. And to say that the performance was weak, to say that it was poor, would be the understatement of the year. Shedeur Sanders did not play well at all. And if we're being completely honest, he has not really played very well in the remaining preseason since that first game debut against the Carolina Panthers. And yesterday was no different whatsoever. 3 for 6. 14 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He could just get nothing going. And, now there has been this big time debate over social media, obviously, through the NFL analysts and whatnot, of what is this really for the Cleveland Browns? Was Shedeur really sabotaged yesterday by having poor receiving options and whatnot, by having a poor offensive line that pressure begins to crash in, by the second that he's able to hike the ball. Are the Cleveland Browns really setting him up for failure and putting him out there with nothing to work with? And he's simply a better talent than everyone out there, but is not able to do things with the tools that he has been given. And I think that there is some truth to that. But I also think that there is some truth that there is some real self-sabotage here for Shedeur Sanders. Yes, I understand that the talent isn't there, right? And that the offensive line, that he has struggled a lot with offensive lines, both in college and now in the pro league, being with these second or third stringers of the Cleveland Browns. But I also feel like he also has done nothing to really grow and evolve his game as a pocket passer. I mean, he still has the big time weaknesses that we saw within Colorado, which is his drop back and his inability to recognize when he needs to throw the ball away. When you look at his drop back on a couple of these plays, he's dropping back 5, 6, 7, at times even 8 steps into the backfield. And we've talked about this before. What that really does for your offensive line is it really neutralizes them, because it now gives the edge rushers a straight line to get to you. They can't get out wide enough to be able to make up for that kind of space and be able to block those guys off, especially because those edge rushers are a lot of time are a little bit more athletic and a lot quicker than them. They're going to be able to just run right around them and be able to quickly get to you. He needs to be able to recognize that he needs to shorten his drop back to 2 or 3 steps. Stay within that square, stay within that rectangle of the pocket. And then when pressure does begin to collapse in on him and he's feeling it from both sides, don't go backwards. That's one of the big things that he is having issues with right now. And again, a lot of what he was doing in his college career is he does this weird little spin backwards that takes him back 2 or 3 yards. And now it's putting him even deeper back into the field. So not only now does he not really have a big time read on what receiver he really wants to throw to, because he hasn't had a lot of time in the pocket, but now he's making it worse. He's making it a much deeper throw. He's having to turn his head around, and now look for a pass while you still have a defensive end on your tail. He's just making things a lot more difficult for himself. And then when that play does begin to break down, he cannot recognize when he needs to get outside the pocket and be able to throw the ball away. And now, because he has taken that big drop back and he has done that big time spin, he has put himself, 5 yards back each and every time. Now the sack that he's having isn't a 2 or 3 yard loss. It's a 15-yard loss. In some cases, it's a 20-yard loss. It is a big time negative on that offense, and it really stalls the momentum for the drive and just completely makes the drive dead from there on forward. But outside of that, then the big thing that a lot of people are talking about is him being pulled out with about 2 minutes left for the game-winning drive against the Rams for the substitution of Tyler Huntley, which Huntley is able to drive the Browns down the field and was able to make that game-saving drive, being able to go down and kick a field goal and be able to win the game for them. Huntley was able to execute that. And that was really my questioning when the Cleveland Browns really decided to sign Tyler Huntley. Because, yes, I understood that Flacco, even Shedeur, Dylan Gabriel, and Kenny Pickett, all 4 of their guys were dealing with big-time nagging injuries. But I was wondering with what role Huntley was really going to play. As in, was he just going to be a filler for a very minimal amount of time for 1 to 2 weeks until these guys were able to get back onto the field? Or was he going to be a legitimate player and potentially grabbing a roster spot for the Cleveland Browns? And week by week, as it's gone on, as he's been able to extend his time staying in Cleveland, I begin to think that this dude has become a bigger and bigger time player within this than we originally thought he was going to be. The Browns have stated on multiple occasions that they are very interested in rolling into the season with 4 total quarterbacks. They've talked about Flacco as their starter, having Kenny Pickett as that backup, and then trying their best to go out and develop Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders behind those guys and bringing them in, in a year or two to be able to start behind those guys. But like we've said in previous episodes, we know that the Browns kind of picked Shedeur Sanders by default, that there possibly wasn't even a ton of interest there for Shedeur Sanders within the draft. That's why, Dylan Gabriel was able to go before him in the 4th round. And the Browns kind of looked at Shedeur in the 5th round and kind of said, hey, that's pretty adequate value for a guy who was supposed to be the best quarterback in this draft, falling back to the 5th round. why don't we take him? Maybe we could use him as a trade piece, if anything. We could just cut him. He is really a throwaway piece into that. And so with Huntley taking that game-winning drive down and being able to win the game, the question now becomes, do the Browns want one more veteran presence within their quarterback room in Tyler Huntley? Did Huntley have enough playing time and enough snaps, and has he had enough history before his stay with the Cleveland Browns to be able to get a roster spot for himself? Or are the Browns still going to bite the bullet and roll with Shedeur Sanders? And even if that, what role is Shedeur really going to play within this quarterback room? Is he going to have an opportunity through practices to really be able to rise himself above the depth chart? Because right now, I'll admit there is some favoring towards Dillon Gabriel. It is clear that Gabriel is having more reps with starting caliber guys within the league, that Dillon Gabriel is having more of an opportunity to have more talented weapons around him than Shedeur Sanders, which obviously that's Shedeur's fault in some aspects, with him, completely ignoring a lot of the aspects within the draft process and completely taking himself down to the 5th round. But at times it just feels like they're not even giving him a chance, and that's what kind of sucks. And what even sucks more is we've talked about this a lot within past YouTube videos, is that we don't know how much of a plan B there really is for Shedeur after this. I mean, let's say he does get cut and Huntley is able to take that spot, or the Browns end up changing their mind and they want to go with 3 quarterbacks in the season and they roll with Flacco, Gabriel, and Pickett. What's next for Shedeur? Where can he go? What team is really going to be vying for his services? What team is really going to be wanting to take the risk? Because they didn't want to take the risk of taking a high draft pick or even a mid-round draft pick to go ahead and take him. I mean, we've theorized other teams that could potentially go with him. I think maybe Indianapolis could be an interesting spot with him, with them kind of disregarding Anthony Richardson now and rolling with Daniel Jones. That could be potentially an option. The New York Giants are completely not an option, with Jackson Dart absolutely balling within preseason. So, I mean, who else? Can he get a backup job somewhere like maybe Carolina or something like that, who has struggled in the past with poor performances from Bryce Young? San Francisco 49ers maybe? Dallas Cowboys, who Deion Sanders has some history with, and who Dak Prescott, who has been injured in previous years. Is Jerry Jones really going to want to take that on? There are possibilities. There are options. But again, as an analyst, we're not in these locker rooms. We're not within these front offices. We don't know what these teams are really thinking. And just from the information that we have been given from the draft, it seems to me like these teams are not interested whatsoever in going on with the circus that is Shedeur Sanders. And now with back-to-back really average to poor performances from him, I wonder if his shelf life is starting to become very limited within Cleveland and within the NFL. And that sucks. I want the dude to succeed. I want to see him be a starter in this league. I love watching him at Colorado, and I want to see him succeed. But right now, the path is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and it's becoming more and more difficult to see him grabbing a spot on an NFL roster. And even if he does, at least as of right now, there's not a path forward for him within the next 1, 2, potentially even 3 years to potentially grab a starting spot in Cleveland, especially if Dillon Gabriel puts together the performances that he continues to do and continues to show that he has strengths in places like the pocket presence where Shedeur Sanders has big-time weaknesses. But overall, let me know what you guys think about that. What do you really think about Shedeur Sanders and his situation with the Cleveland Browns? Do you believe that Cleveland is really sabotaging him and putting him in bad spots? Or do you think that there are big-time holes and weaknesses within his game, and because of that, he is simply self-sabotaging himself? Do you think he's going to be able to make a roster spot? And what do you think is really in for his future with the Cleveland Browns or potentially somewhere else? Can he get to a position where he is a starting quarterback? Let me know about all that down below within the comment section, as well as subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing with your friends. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. We're on all those social medias. You will get to see my latest reaction to breaking news within the NBA, the NFL, and combat sports. And you will never miss for whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And without further ado, guys, that's all that I have for you guys today. I will see you guys on the next one. Have a great start to your week. Football season is almost here. And peace.